That's the difference between a coach and a cult leader. Is a cult leader will take advantage and prey on soft men and take their wives for concubines. Warning!
You're watching Dr. Todd Lee TV, where theoretically you could learn a bunch of cool shit.
Greetings, Earthlings. It is I, Dr. Todd Lee, and I am here today to tell you how to form a cult. That's right. This is not an anabolic pharmacology video today. This is a psychology video. That although I am a medical doctor, IFBB pro bodybuilder, and biochemist, people don't realize I also have some background in psychiatry, and I have a degree in psychology. I've been a substance abuse counselor. I've worked on a suicide helpline, and I used to help teenagers with problems. That's right. Not just creating problems for themselves and others, but dealing with their problems. I also train people for all types of athletic events, such as bikini and bodybuilding competitions, powerlifting and whatnot. And I own a coaching business, which I've had for 15 years, which is Apex Coaching. With my partner, Dr. Karina Dodson, we will help anyone achieve whatever goal they need, whether it is bodybuilding, bikini, wellness, classic physique. I've even done posing coaching. So what does that have to do with being a cultist? Well, cults are a negative term used for a small group that has a religion. Now, if you've noticed in the past 5 years or so, there's all types of secular cults. Like there's the carnivores, there's the vegans, there's the CrossFitters, there's woke, there's Antifa, that these are all still cults. They're just secular cults. So I formed my first cult in 2010. Everyone was having these bodybuilding teams, and it was something weak as fuck, like team, and it would be the name of the person. So for instance, Kim Odo's team was called Kim Odo, but Team Odo, so they changed it to Odo's Angels, which is actually kind of cool name. And there was Team Bombshell out of New York or California or whatever. And those were bikini teams. And I was like, well, I'm going to start coaching bikini because there's a very low bar for entry. Anybody can do this. We've got a lot of strippers and hairdressers and waitresses. People who made money off of looking good would want to do bikini competition prep because it would be an impetus to stick to a plan and have some discipline or regimentation. I don't know if you remember this, but there was this whole boot camp, like bikini boot camp or booty boot camp. And the idea was that it was like you show up and someone forces you to go through some bullshit and you're supposed to get less fat. And with bikini contest prep, it's a lot harder than that. So the military thing is, I don't want to say it's like a cult, but there's some overlap between the military's boot camps and a cult. So the ideas in developing a cult, the best evidence for this would be Jim Jones. So Jim Jones was kind of like the role model for how to do this right. So it's isolate, indoctrinate. So when people do bodybuilding coaching or when they do bikini contest prep, the first thing that happens to them is when they have their diet and they have their Tupperware, their family or friends would alienate them and verbally abuse them. Everyone would be like encouraging them until, if it's a woman, they would get too thin, meaning that they're a lower dress size than the person who's insulting them. So if a woman's like, you're fat, you're never going to get a husband, lose some weight, and then their daughter gets thinner than them, they're like, you're too skinny, you need to eat more. Because the woman doesn't want the competition. It doesn't matter that it's her daughter. Up here, subconsciously, it's just another woman. She's just competition. So I always found that what was funny was I would say to these women, I was like, your mother and your sisters are going to turn on you first. They're like, oh no, my mother and me, we have such a good relationship. My sister's such a good support network. I'm like, fantastic. I hope you're the outlier. I really do. But when I'm right, let me know and I'll help you navigate this. And so when they show up with Tupperware to an event, when they're eating their chicken and rice out of Tupperware instead of at a restaurant, when they're doing what they're supposed to do, then they would get pushback from their family about how, oh, you're letting this man control your life. You're letting him tell you what to do. You should eat this. You should have a drink. And I'm like, these people are trying to sabotage you. No, they love me. I'm like, if they loved you, they'd want what's best for you. They'd want to support you in accomplishing your goals. And they'd want you to eat healthy, clean food. But they don't like you and you eat clean and healthy around them because it makes them feel bad about themselves. And since they care more about themselves than they do about you, they're going to try to get you out of your diet. They're going to try to sabotage your diet because it makes them feel in control of you. They don't like that you're taking control of your life. So they're going to want to control you. And they're going to deflect it onto me. They're going to say, this man's controlling you. And I don't think he's a real doctor. And no doctor is going to have you do this. They need to discredit me, to have you lose faith in me so that they can get you to stop listening to me so that they can get control of you, because they don't like that in their eyes, it's about control. They don't understand that you have control of yourself and you're choosing to follow a path that I have paved for you on bricks made of chicken and rice. And that path leads to victory. That the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And the road to victory is paved with chicken and rice. And blood, sweat, and tears is the mortar. And so by getting these women to understand that their support network isn't a support network, they're fair weather supporters, this involuntarily isolates them. Now, what a lot of these other teams do, and I didn't do this, I had another reasoning behind this, what a lot of these teams provide is a community and a new family, a sisterhood for the other girls, so that when you lose your sisters, you lose your mother because you see them for the jealous hags that they are, that you now have another group of women that can form a tight-knit community and protect you and feed. They can exchange hacks and recipes and how to make the bland food taste good. And they can catch you when you're cheating and not tell on you to your coach, but try to get you to confess to your coach on your own. And this works really well. The problem I found is the women will compete. That as you are the head of this cult, the members of the cult will fight for supremacy as to who gets to be the top girl. That you'll see this in cave society, that the queen or the highest status female is the one that pairs up with the chieftain, and the chieftain's usually the most powerful male. And so the status of women is based off of the status of their mates. So one problem is if you have a team of girls that you're coaching, they'll compete for which one of them gets to be your favorite girl. And obviously, there's different ways of getting your attention, none of which is going to be conducive to the end goal, especially when a lot of these women are going to be married or have boyfriends. So what I found and what I did, which other people didn't do, but I did, is I would keep them separate. I would keep them isolated. They wouldn't know the other members on the team. I also left out the name of the team. That at the time, the team wasn't called Team Lee, because I thought that was gay as fuck. The team was called Operation Ragnarok, because Project Valkyrie was taken by a movie about Tom Cruise killing Nazis. And so since I lived in Howell, Michigan at the time, which was the KKK capital of Michigan, I wasn't born there. I wasn't raised there. The hospital that I worked at paid more than any other hospital. That's why I worked there. And so I moved to Howell, Michigan, KKK capital of Michigan, so that I could work for more money. And I ended up becoming part of a powerlifting team. And I earned my skull on Triple X powerlifting. You had to win a powerlifting meet, then you get a skull. And you weren't allowed to wear a skull in that town unless you're part of the team. So I made the logo for Operation Ragnarok. The best part about this is nobody fucking looked up what Ragnarok meant. So they're wearing tank tops that say Operation Ragnarok, and they don't realize what it means. It's like Operation Ending the World. That I literally had an apocalypse cult, and they're wearing the shirts, and nobody fucking caught on that that's what they were advertising, is that Todd's plan to end the world. And I have this army of bikini girls that, like I'm a Bond villain, and that you've got these Bond girls that, oh man, of course, this is 15 years later, I'm finally doing this confessional video. And no, I've never talked about this ever before in my life. I've put it all together, all the pieces in one place. So one of the ways that the Jim Jones worked is he was to separate people away from their friends and their families and take them to a place where they only had each other and they only had a common interest and goals and beliefs, so that they validated each other's decisions and also reinforced each other's beliefs. And that's where he took them all to Ghana, I believe, in Africa. And that's one of the key concepts of cults is isolate and separate. You'll see this with abusive men. What they'll do is they'll to get a girl, they usually go for someone younger, who's less educated, insecure, gullible, get them to turn them against their families, and then move them out of state. Once you separate them from their families and move them out of state, then they have no one to turn to for support but you. So that's what occultists do, is they get everyone to leave their home. In this Jim Jones's case, go to Ghana, then they have no one to go turn to support but him or the other cultists. Now, in a Bikini sense, if you don't have a team where the girls will compete with each other and get catty, if you want to keep them separate from each other, then you don't tell them who the other members are. And you don't let them wear their shirt outside of the gym. They can only put their shirt on for combat. That this is your war paint. You put that shirt on when you lift, and you take that shirt off when you're not lifting. So that's a green light for violence. And your target is the weights. You're going to kill those weights. And that's your armor, that's your war paint that you put on before you do so. And that you don't let them know who each other are so they don't compete. The problem with this is you're indirectly isolating, and then the only support they have is you, which is an unhealthy thing to do as a coach, because then you become not only the most important person in their life, you're like the only person in their life. So this is effective for making a cult, but it's not effective for the client's emotional well-being, because if you were a perfect person and devoid of sin or flaws, that would be kind of fine. But nobody is. Everybody's got some flaws. Everyone's an imperfect person. So you don't want to be anyone's sole source of support, because sometimes your advice might be not good. It might be bad. You're not always going to be right 100% of the time. Sometimes you're going to be wrong. So this is why this video is called How to Form a Cult, or How to Start a Cult, not How to Be a Perfect Coach. In doing the coaching thing, I figured out how to fine-tune cult formation. So at this point, got an army of girls, got some guys too, and some of the guys actually knew what Ragnarok was. And so I said, this is the time of mass monsters. Nobody had small waist. There was no classic physique. There was no men's physique. There was just body. There was no 212. There was just bodybuilding. And everybody had these big, huge guts. And I was like, would you rather be a god or a monster? And they'd be like, I'd rather be a god. And it's like, this is the time of the mass monsters. So Operation Ragnarok, our operation is to end this world of mass monsters and start a new world populated with gods. We want to have perfect aesthetic physiques. We want to be gods, not monsters. And so before there was classic physique, before there was men's physique, when everybody had a big fucking gross waist, when everyone looked like pregnant cavemen, that's when I started this mission, is to have beautiful women and men that look like gods. Valkyries and that the Vanir and that's also you'll think this is funny. Yes, this preceded Valhalla Labs. Valhalla Labs didn't come until 2015. This is actually the 10th year anniversary of Valhalla Labs. If you want the best supplements in Midgard or any of the 9 realms, don't hesitate. Go to valhalla-labs.com to get the products that I designed. I started my own business so that no one could say no to me, and I could make the best products at the lowest prices, profits be damned, so that you could get the best products on earth. Now, one of the things I did is, over the years, 4 or 5 years go by, I've still got this team, Operation Ragnarok, that I was very successful at helping girls win, sometimes even their first show, sometimes overall their first show. Had a couple guys do very well at the national level as well. Jim Jones was known for having an incident where he gave everyone purple Kool-Aid and they all died. So I was always of the opinion that no one should ever lift first thing in the morning, that it's going to break down muscle because you're in a calorie deficient state. Your liver will probably be empty of glycogen, especially if you're in prep. and that your body temperature doesn't reach its proper temperature for maximum strength until you've been awake for about 8 hours. Caffeine can mitigate this, but it doesn't obviate this. And the best thing to do is to wake up, take the Wrath of the Valkyrie and other medicines that you need to get the most out of your fasted cardio, get 2 or 3 meals in, then have your Fenris Fury pre-workout, your battle mead, and get the best workout possible with the biggest pump possible. And then proceed with the rest of your meals post-workout, and then have dragon drinks before bed. So one thing I found was that a lot of people refused to listen, and they would keep working out in the morning. So what I did is I designed Fenris Fury to be red and Thor's Hammer to be blue. Thor's Hammer is something you drink first thing in the morning that basically increased natural testosterone levels. Or if you were on cycle, it protected your testicles from atrophying. Or if you were post-cycle, it would restore your body to natural functioning. It's basically like an HCG tamoxifen blend, but instead of it being female hormones and breast cancer meds, it was something designed specifically for men to optimize their hormones. It still exists. Feel free to get some at biolabs.com or don't. It's your loss. So I always had Fenris Fury as blue. I mean, I always had Thor's Hammer as blue, and I always had Fenris Fury as red. So if they were to drink their Thors on an empty stomach, first thing when they're supposed to, but they were going to train on an empty stomach, they would mix their Fenris with their Thors, and red plus blue equals purple. So they'd be drinking purple Kool-Aid. So it was my little joke that if you disobey me, I will strike you dead. But I won't be striking dead. You'll strike yourself dead because you'll mix the red with the blue, and you'd get purple. And it's little jokes like that. Like I had the name of the name of the team was Project End the World. The fact that if you train first thing in the morning, like I told you not to, you'd end up inadvertently drinking purple Kool-Aid and being like my mini curse. It's little stuff like that that puts the fine touches on life to make it entertaining. So that's pretty much my approach towards cults, and how it correlates with the coaching stuff. Other things about cults. And my most recent episode with Leo, we talked about, he was saying, do you think what the Democrats did was right, trying to kill Trump? Or do you think somebody would have just carried on the MAGA theme? And I said, now he wasn't suggesting anyone should kill Trump. I'm not suggesting anyone kill Trump. He wasn't saying the Democrats did try to kill Trump. I'm not saying they did. He's saying if that's what they did, would their tactic have worked or backfired? Would they have made a martyr of him and then made the MAGA movement grow bigger? And I said, that shit happens in movies. But in reality, cults are cults of personality. That it's about a charismatic leader. It never matters what he says. What matters is how he says it. Humans are traditionally emotional. The higher the IQ, the better they're able to override the emotions. The lower the IQ, the more the emotions override the logic. And as people get upset or passionate, their IQ goes down and down and down and down. So a person might be smart, but you get a group of people together and they get fucking retarded. So collective groups of people are usually led by the most charismatic person. Charismatic people are generally extroverts. Extroverts are generally feelers, not thinkers. So you have emotional wrecks who are projecting their inadequacies on the world, running their mouth, leading groups of people off of a cliff, metaphorically. So usually if you had a smart, cunning sociopath with Machiavellian traits, then he would be able to orchestrate a bunch of weak, dumb people into believing a bunch of bullshit and buying into his crap. And those people don't really understand the message. The message doesn't even have to be airtight. Nobody really thinks their way through it. They just need to believe in him because of his charisma. Now, one way that cults work is they have things like symbolism, gestures, and some dogma and rituals. If you can have symbolism, gestures, dogma, and rituals, you can create a proper cult just for you. That, for instance, if you were to have a flag, you could put whatever symbols you want on that flag, and they might be esoteric and kind of weird. No one knows what the fuck it means, but you teach the people in the group, or leaders in the community of the group, like thought leaders inside the group. For instance, the smartest way to do it is have cells that don't communicate with each other. So you, as the cult leader, has a chapter master, and the chapter master is smart enough to understand what you're teaching, but weak-minded enough to never question. And then under them, they just have a bunch of emotional shitbags that they could just manipulate and control. And that chapter master knows what the symbols are. He knows the dogma. He knows the rhetoric. He knows the manifesto. And he teaches in like a sermon-like format the plebeians as to exactly what they're supposed to feel, think, and do. But if the flag has symbols on it, ideally the people know what the symbols mean, and that they, when they see flags, they can say, I'm part of this movement because I know that flag, and I know this symbol means it's this chapter, and this symbol means that this is the purpose of this chapter, and things like that. And so they have a special type of symbolism and code, like gangs have gang sides. The vampires in Blade would tag buildings to let them know which are vampire friendly buildings or which are buildings you should stay away from. That this is normal for cults. Now, if there's a certain stories or parables where you read through it, for instance, the luminary figures, for instance, in AA, there's Bill and Bob. So Bill and Bob are these founders of AA, and they're basically held up like godlike or demigod-like beings. And that the idea is you emulate their behavior, like Christianity teaches you to emulate Jesus. And there's symbols. There's like the triangle with the circle is something that was borrowed from the Order of Golden Dawn. It was in the Illuminati. It's been the triangle, the represents some things and the circle represents others. It's on the back of your dollar bill. Pull out a dollar bill, look at the back of it. There's a pyramid in it. There's a triangle at the top with an eye in the middle. That's a triangle in the circle. So there's cults and there's symbology everywhere. That's really important for a cult so that people feel included. Then there's mantras and expressions. So Aleister Crowley, again from the Cult of the Golden Dawn, said, "Do what thou wilt is the whole of the law." And that's an extremely important expression because it basically teaches that as long as you want something, you can make it happen. It's now recently there's been a resurgence of this with this book called The Secret. And The Secret implies that you're in a group of a small group, a special enlightened group. If you read this book, it's a perfect title for, I want to know the secret. It's like, and the secret is power of positive thinking. If you think positive thoughts, positive things will happen to you. That you attract like energy, which is the opposite of magnetism, but these people don't need to have anything to do with science. That if you're positive, positive things come to you. If you're negative, negative things come to you. Obviously, it's the opposite. If your negative charges attract positive charges attract negative charges, positive charges repulse positive charges. And I can give more examples of that than the other, but that's what the book says. Is like, think positive things happen to you. It's the secret. And so people want to be part of the secret. So they're going to pay the $17.95 to own the book and now be in on the secret. So that's the other thing about cults. There's usually dues. Now, if we look at the David Koresh situation, those people at the Branch Davidian complex, they had to basically give up everything to come join him, but they bring what they can and they donate it to the community. So this is communism in a sense, culture, a form of communism, but there's a figurehead. And like Negan and like from the Saviors from Walking Dead season 7, and like David Koresh, all the women want to sleep with the leader. No one wants to sleep with the beta. They want to sleep with the alpha. So generally, the leader of the cult has a harem, and that all the children generated from that harem are the leader's kids. Nobody else is having kids. Just the leader of the cult is having the kids. And then the men that came with the women are convinced that they're special for choosing to have a divine seed grow inside of their wife, that you're the protector and provider for a divine vessel, the wife, and the divine child, the divine seed that grows into the divine child. And so you have to sell this man that is a good idea to let his wife sleep with other dude. But he gets to be in the status tier just below the concubine. So at the top is the cult leader. Then under the cult leader is the divine children generated by the concubines. Under the divine children is the concubines themselves. Under the divine concubine are the husbands of the concubines. And then they're the chief military force because they have a lot of latent anger. But you've got to take that anger, instead of letting it come to you as the cult leader, you have to direct it on other people, like the ATF in the case of David Koresh, or like anyone that isn't in the Saviors. So what did Negan do? Negan would take the band of men that were actually aggressive men and send them out from the Savior's base to find other people to kill their leader and bring the rest back as potential converts, basically slaves, and confiscate their shit. So you take the dangerous men that are aggressive, turn them against another set of enemies, and turn them loose and keep them outside the confines. And then at the bottom are the elderly and other children that are just basically worker class. So there's the cult leader at the top, his divine children, the concubines, which are the hot chicks. Then there's the military class, which are the angry husbands of the hot chicks who you've convinced not to attack you, but to attack people outside of you. And then under them, you've got the worker class, which are the people too weak to be fighters and too unattractive or too old to be concubines. Negan's a smart motherfucker. And everything Negan does makes sense. Every single thing Negan does makes sense. Why was Negan so smart? Because he was a coach. That Negan was a coach. Jim Jones was actually supposed to be a major thought leader too. He was like a professor or something. I didn't do enough research on that guy, but it's funny how a lot of these people were really special in life and helped a lot of people. But when you take the skills of teaching and leading, it can be subverted if you have the presence of sociopathy and Machiavellian thinking. Now, I think we covered everything we need to about how to run a cult. That we've covered financial ways that people have dues that they pay into to be part of the cult. An example of this is Scientology, that the way to ascend to the next level of Scientology is to pay more money, and that you get different colored robes every time you go up a level. Really important. The symbolism and the like, for instance, in AA, as you get years of sobriety, you get a different coin every year that has a different number on it. And your rank in AA is how much sobriety you have. For instance, I've got 25 years sober. If I went to AA and collected my coin, I would have 25 years. There's very few people on the planet that have 25 years sober. This would make me an extremely high rank if I was to join AA again. Now, those ranks matter in all organizations. Now, just because something's a cult doesn't make it bad. I think AA is great. I'm not trying to disparage AA. I'm not trying to put its members down. I'm not trying to expose their traditions or the steps. I think AA is extremely important. It's a great example of when cults can be useful. I think that bodybuilding teams, when there's women who are being isolated and ostracized from their families because their families turn on them because they're doing something that's good for them and their family doesn't like losing control to a coach, I think a way for the coach to displace his control is to have the team as a cohesive unit so they have a sense of community. Although there might be bickering and infighting, and usually the girls will ostracize one or two girls, as a whole, at least it provides a sense of support network outside of yourself as the coach. Because as a coach of women, you're pretty much a therapist. And if you're not trained in therapy, or if you are, you could be more harm than good. Men don't generally need cults unless there's a few factors, which would be a lot of key points that might hit a little close to home. So I'm not even going to go there with the types of men that would fall into a cult. But generally, if you're what modern day term incel refers to men who have been discarded by society, in that case, it's men who are angry at women because they feel rejected by women because they lack social skills, but they think it's physical. So if that incel was to turn to anabolic steroids to try to build muscles and thinking the muscles would then be attractive enough to overcome the personality that he doesn't know is flawed, that might be helpful. But in general, that means that because they have poor emotional control, their emotions are heightened by the anabolic steroids, and that if those emotions are seen as unattractive, as is usually the case, men are supposed to be stoic regardless of what the media tells you. Women are typically, heterosexual women are typically attracted to stoic men because stoicism shows self-control. Stoicism is based off of courage, self-control, wisdom, and honor. The exact words Marcus Aurelius used was fortitude, temperance, prudence, and justice. But those don't translate well into our, we have words, we have those words, they don't mean the same thing. So back then it meant courage, self-control, wisdom, and honor. If men have those things, even though women don't value those things specifically in female culture, they still want a man to have those things, even though they don't know, wouldn't pinpoint that's what he has. Like, I like how courageous my husband is. No, they would say, like, I like that when men are fighting, my husband stands in between me and them. Or I like that when I squeal, he runs in the room. And if I'm like, it's a mouse, he doesn't make fun of me. He just catches the mouse and lets it outside. Or I like that my man is faithful and he doesn't look at other women. That would be honor. Or I like that my man is able to not drink if I'm getting drunk so that he can drive me home safely. That would be self-control. So women will tell you a thing that actually belies a stoic virtue. If men are lacking those virtues, taking steroids and getting bigger muscles isn't going to make them more masculine. They look more masculine, but that isn't going to work. And so those types of people, as evidenced in the television show American Horror Story season 7, it's a perfect example of that you had two different cults. One was an ultra woke cult and one was an ultra right wing cult, and showed that two extremes of the political spectrum can still be cult like, that hyper cowardly and agreeable people or hyper courageous and aggressive people that are disagreeable can still be sucked into a cult, because usually men that have little stoicism are lacking in those virtues because they weren't taught them by a father figure. So a cult leader could be a father figure. So as a coach, you're taking on a parental role on another man. And usually the men that are the easiest to coach are ones that didn't have great relationships with their dads and don't have a lot of self-esteem. Now, that doesn't mean you should prey on people like that. You should build up their self-esteem, and you should be a source of support and be there for them and help them actualize their potential, develop stoic traits, because those stoic traits are necessary to being the best bodybuilder. You need to be courageous. You need to have honor. You need to have self-control, obviously, and you need to have good judgment or wisdom to be a bodybuilder. Like, for instance, you have to have the judgment not to use blends. You have to have the self-control not to cheat on your diet or your wife. You need to have enough honor to not stare at girls' butts, no matter how trashy they're dressed at the gym. And you have to have the courage to get under the bar, no matter how scared you are. That all of these things are the stoic virtues that make a man. The muscle will come. First, be a man and the muscle will come. Steroids won't make you a man. It'll make you look like a man. And then when a woman finds out you're soft on the inside, it's false advertising. They'll be pissed. That the women you attract with muscles expect a hard interior, not a soft interior. If you're soft on the inside and you want a woman to love you for you, don't grow fucking muscles with steroids. Find a girl who likes a soy boy or who does CrossFit and has a dad bod. Because if they want a soft man, you should look soft on the outside if you're soft on the inside. It's false advertising to be soft on the inside and hard on the outside. Soft men generally can be made into strong men. That's the difference between a coach and a cult leader. As a cult leader will take advantage and prey on soft men and take their wives for concubines. Whereas a coach will take a soft man and turn him into a hard man to protect him from the cult leaders. This is shepherd versus a wolf in shepherd's clothing. And with that, I will bid you adieu. I hope you found some use out of this video. You tuned in thinking it would be a fucking joke, that Todd's just going off on a rant, that he's just being parabolic, not hyperbolic. It isn't. This is real shit. My life is hyperbole to others, but I actually live through it. Or I'm just suffering from extreme psychosis and or at least at the very least schizotypal personality disorder, and my recollection of my life is more dramatic and exciting than it actually was. I'll never know, and neither will you. Anyway, until next time, may the force be with you.